Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Good evening and welcome to the Late Show with Tim Smale. I am Tim Smale. Tonight I am going to be welcoming onto the show my guest Alan Johnson, and we're going to be talking about 2040 or bust. Can schools really keep up with the future? We're going to be talking about vision, curriculum, and the future-ready school. What does it actually mean to prepare students for a world that doesn't exist yet? The aim on our show tonight is not to set a vision as the only way forward, but to spark discussion, debate, and curiosity. So please do post your comments as you listen live to the show. So guys, here's what I've been thinking about. Every school I've worked in has had a vision statement. I mean, you know the ones, right? Like inspiring lifelong learners, like nurturing the whole child. They're the words on the wall as you walk in the reception of the school, or they're the Latin phrase on the school badge, or they're, you know, somewhere alongside British values somewhere around the school on a display board or on the homepage of the school website, right? And vision statements are as varied as they can be, but do they reflect an accurate vision of the future, or do they reflect an accurate vision of the past? Just think about this, right? The students coming into our schools now, they're going to be leaving school in 2040. They'll be leaving school in 2040. I don't know about you. That makes me feel pretty old already. And they'll be navigating careers that don't exist yet. They'll be solving problems that we can't yet name. And they'll be making decisions about technology we haven't yet invented. And the question that really strikes me is, are we building our curricula around that idea? Or are we just teaching the same things we've always done and then slapping a vision statement on top? I've spent 22 years in classrooms, and I genuinely don't know if we're preparing students for their future or for our futures. And that's really what I want to dig in with Alan today. So the thought I have for you is whether a strong vision is enough, or do we risk spending so much time on the destination that we kind of forget to look at the road? So I wanted to kind of trawl through some of the headlines and sort of pick apart one in particular. Like last week, the government published its long-awaited white paper, and it's titled, and I really sort of want you to hear this, it's titled Every Child Achieving and Thriving. It sets out a 10-year vision for education in England, covering curriculum changes, SEND reform, funding, attendance, behavior, and the structure of the school system itself. It's a 10-year vision. Like, and tonight we're going to be talking about 2014. It's 14 years away. So you would hope that a white paper published in the last week would have something meaningful to say about preparing children for a fundamentally different world. You would hope that, right? Bless you. And there are genuinely interesting things in the white paper. There's a new enrichment entitlement for every child, requiring schools to provide access to civic engagement, to arts and culture, nature and outdoor activities, sport and wider life skills. And that's not nothing. I mean, that's actually something, right? And the paper also acknowledges, and I'm quoting directly from the document here, that out of 27 European countries, the UK is last in how happy 15-year-olds are with their life. And this isn't a new statistic, but it is quite the sentence to include in your own white paper. And I have to hand it to the government. I have to give them points for their honesty. But we probably have to award 0 points for the 30 years of policy that got us there. The sticking point for me, and what I'm genuinely curious about, is the paper proposes reforming Progress 8 to give greater weight to creative subjects while retaining that strong academic core, including English, maths, and science, which is fine. But Progress 8 is still Progress 8. The exam system is still the exam system. We've added enrichment around the edges, but the engine underneath hasn't changed. It's a bit like repainting a car and calling it a new model. Still the same car, it's still going to the same places. The title says every child achieving and thriving, and I genuinely hope it delivers that. But the question I want to put to Alan tonight on our show is a white paper that moves us from narrow to broad, but leaves the exam system largely intact, actually a vision for 2040? Or is it a vision for a slightly nicer version of right now? Because there is a difference, right? And I think our children deserve us to be honest about which one we're actually offering them. So now let's start moving towards the show, and it's 2040 or bust. And there is a conversation about future ready education. It's been happening for 20 years. Every generation of politicians announces that schools need to change. We had a fantastic interview with Michael Gove as he sort of discussed his ideas and the reasons and motives for the changes that he made within his administration. And yet here we are, right? We're still sorting young people by how well they can recall information under timed exam conditions. And I really sort of started to sort of think to myself, like, is this actually a problem of a vision within schools? I don't think it is. I think plenty of teachers and school leaders have vision. The question I do keep coming back to is, does the system around schools actually want that vision to succeed? I mean, if we think about who designed the current system, like politicians were sorted by exams, university admissions tutors were sorted by exams. I mean, the entire infrastructure of modern professional life was built on that assumption that exam performance predicts capability. And I guess to dismantle that is to question the legitimacy of our own success. And that's pretty hard to do voluntarily. And every generation of kind of reform language gets absorbed without really changing. Like, critical thinking appears on hundreds of school vision statements and on the mark scheme for that structured exam essay. The word skills gets added to curriculum documents without the assessment ever changing. And I think institutions have become very good at metabolizing a challenge without having the opportunity to answer those challenges. So my worry isn't that schools lack vision. My worry is that every time a school builds a genuinely different vision, the exam board, the league table, the university's admissions process, the inspection framework, they all sort of quietly reassert the old order. And my point really is that vision without system change isn't transformative, it's decorative. So why don't you tell me, am I wrong? Am I right? Like, please do, live on our show, send us a comment and let us know what you're thinking, and we'll try and tackle as many of your points, your questions, your queries, your doubts, your debates as we possibly can. Now, today's guest is Alan Johnson. He's an assistant head with responsibility for teaching and learning And at the heart of his approach is this genuine belief that schools can be built around a clear and honest sense of purpose, encouraging things like high order thinking and preparing students for the future, not just for results. Alan is a passionate advocate for evidence-informed practice, and I've really enjoyed speaking to him as we prepared for the show. He's implemented staff training and development initiatives, and he grounds those in research and cognitive science. And that forward-thinking approach has had a tangible impact on his school and community, because it's culminated in his current school being accredited as a thinking school. So I would like to welcome to the stage Alan.
Thank you, Tim. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the show. And I'm really looking forward to sort of tackling ideas about the vision of what schooling should start to look like as we think about, 2040, Alan.
It's crazy. I mean, before we were talking, I kind of came up with, I didn't invent 2040, obviously, but I'm really lucky at the moment. I'm working with our early years and key stage 1 kids. And I was just thinking, as well as looking at what we're doing with key stage 3 and so on. So, wait a minute, what will it be when these guys leave? Work it all, count it back. My maths takes me a while. So 2040, and then you look at 20, you go 20. Okay, that's right. But all right, I'll be 71. It starts to put.
I'll still be 20
in perspective. You'll still be mentally up there. Yeah. But it's crazy. It is crazy. I remember, we all remember. A lot of us remember when 2000 was a thing. Yeah. And now it's 2026, and then we're talking about these little ones leaving in 14 years time, 2040. It's it is what it is, as they say. But it's
2000, 99 to 2000. I was at an end of the world party. I'm pretty sure that was a thing. Like, the machines are going to turn on us, and that's going to be the end.
Yes.
Okay, Alan. So, like, we kind of started with my little precis at the start of the show, like talking about vision statements. And vision statements, I think, are everywhere in education. But can I ask, just like in your experience, like what separates a genuine school vision from one that is just words on a wall?
Just decorative. I think a real vision gives you a genuine sense of purpose, and it'll make some things harder, because it provides challenge. Friction is something I might talk about, and that might come up from time to time, but it makes you stop and think from time to time about what you're doing, how you're doing it. Simon Sinek, I'm sure a lot of us, what is your why that lies at the heart. So it's, as you say, you can have a meta vision, which just is up there somewhere and floats around, and maybe it's in Latin or maybe it isn't, but it's purely decorative.
Yeah.
And so for a vision to mean something, it's got to be something that can have an impact on the day-to-day, how you interact with other people, the respect you show to other people. And I think that could be a cliche just as much as anything else. But when you start to look at that, and what I was pleased with, I won't go on and on about this, but part of our appraisal for the Thinking Schools accreditation actually looked at and mentioned our vision statement and how it's all over the school at eye level. It's not just up here. But when we're talking about children acting metacognitively and thinking about thinking, or conscious thinking, however you want to define that, that's not just academic stuff. That's life stuff. Why have I done that? Why am I talking to this person? Why did I react in the way that I reacted? And it can be, I don't know, that can be a genuine thing, because little kids don't know. They don't know why they do stuff. But older kids, you teach them and they learn that they can reflect upon things, and they can understand why that was hurtful or why it was great, why you've lifted someone up by doing that. So all of that is part of your value system. It's not just outcome, at the end of the day, or the end of when someone walks out of the school. It's more than that. And so it's going to shape CPD, it's going to shape leadership discussions continuously. It should be something.
Where do
something
those
to
sorts of
refer
visions
back
then
to.
go wrong in schools? Is there are there sort of examples of maybe where it's not sort of feeding through and where people are kind of getting it wrong? What sort of mistakes have you seen?
In terms of vision, I think if you try and act too quickly on stuff, if you have a vision which is clear in your own mind, but you haven't clarified stuff, you haven't shared stuff, you haven't really spoken with people. One of the things that was the seed, or one of the seeds that led towards the journey that led towards the thinking schools thing. I've mentioned it again already. But was, you look at evidence-informed practice. You've got to look, in my mind, you've got to look at people like John Hattie. You look at his meta-analyses of things, and what's going to work in my school. It's not the same for every school. You can't just take things up and from there and drop it over here. So the collective teacher efficacy, this sense of individual agency as a teacher coming together, and that combination of agency leading to shared efficacy, only comes through that communal development of things, discussions where everyone's input is important. Everyone's input can have a direct and does have a direct impact on outcome and policy development, and so on and so on and so on. And I think for me, that's where things work if you do it properly. But if you insist on a top-down method, that is an imposition, isn't it? You are imposing something upon others. So to try and go middle up, bottom up, and drive things from the heart of the school, the teachers at the heart of the school, then you've got a greater chance of getting some traction and getting some success, I think.
Great, thank you. So, let's put this into context for a sort of a Wednesday afternoon at school. What does it look like in the corridors on a Wednesday afternoon when that vision is actually working?
Okay, I think the first thing is you feel this stuff more than you can kind of measure it. I spoke to a great head teacher at a fantastic little school, we say up country, a while ago, and they had a farm in the school which all the kids took part in. They grew things literally from, they ended up on the table, let's put it that way, in the school. And I said to this chap, what would the school, can you quantify the success of that? He said, I don't no, not really, but I know we would be diminished, would be less without it. So the success of things is what is going on that becomes habitual, that becomes practice. So I see things, or I hear things, I hear commonality of language, people using the same terms in discussions. I see, and I'm in a classroom, I'm in an office just now, but a classroom just up the corridor. I see a quote from Dylan William on the whiteboard that wouldn't have been there 4 years ago, 5 years ago, but it's there now, about learning and the residue of thought and memory and those kinds of things. I see meaningful, necessary posters up in classrooms, not just for decoration, but they're things about how do I question myself metacognitively, or methods for revision, what's retrieval practice, these kinds of things, a shared sense of purpose. And I'm not going to pretend that this is every conversation, every pupil, every colleague all the time, but it's there, and it starts to become just what you do. It's not an add-on, it's an add-in, and it becomes part of the nature of what you do, I think.
Yeah, interesting. So, I mean, let's talk about the average teacher's day, right? So, pretty full teaching day, I think, at the moment. I've got 25 out of 30 lessons. There's quite a lot going on, and there's a lot of pressure for exam groups. Like, how does the teacher sort of balance that idea of what you want for a teaching and learning vision with a busy working week, exam classes going out? Like, how do you build that sense of vision at crunch times like we are at the moment?
Yeah, so it's not something that you can do immediately, this has been, we are where we are now after a 5-6 year program, that we put together back then, and it's taken those discussions. I think the really important thing is you can't do any of this remotely.
Mm.
You can't do this by email. You can't do this by edict. You can't do it by policy. You've got to go and talk to people, and if I'm honest, I put my hand up. If I look back at the last month or two, I haven't been around as I've been here, but I haven't physically been walking around on a split site as much as I could or should. But I tend to make a point of going in and talking to people and saying, just how's it going, or what have you been doing? And I listen. Listening is, Julian Treasure. If you've seen Julian Treasure online, Cambridge professor, specializes in listening. It's just fascinating. My wife will say I've got to do a bit more on that front, which is fair enough. But but it's there. The point is there. So obviously observations, but you naturally alter things, don't you, by going to observe?
Yeah.
That already altered, that changes the nature of what's going on, and oh, so and so's going, why are they there? And you can always say, carry on, it's fine, I'm just walking around. But even that is going to change the interactions that go on.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, but I think it's subtleties and it's subtle shifts and it's incremental changes over time that change and have an impact on culture. Cultural change, which is what we're talking about really, is not something that you can measure in weeks or months. You can't be impatient about it. And the headmaster here, Guy Ayling, often talks in terms of dogs and cats. Are you a dog or you're a cat? And I know I'm pretty much a dog. Set me off running, I'm off, bang, and my colleague who I share an office with here, who's terrific, he's very much a cat, and we kind of, and that. So but being aware of that, I know I've got to kind of slow myself down and pull back.
Yeah.
And not, you can't demand too much too soon, or you can, but that's where we go back to your previous question of it won't work, and whilst I might have said earlier, we can look at the work, research informed practice and is good, but even then, even if you're looking at the context within your school, it still doesn't mean one size fits all within that context. Maybe this works for science, maybe this works for maths, but does it work for humanities? Does it work for creative arts? Maybe you need to make some adjustment, and you only know that if you go and talk and listen and make those adjustments.
And do we have the time? Do we have the flexibility in schools to do that, or do we end up having to just sort of settle for?
Yeah, it's very. Time is the thing, isn't it? And we have packed days here, colleagues. Our school day goes from 8:30 to 5:30, give or take. And within that, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and then it bleeds into weekends. I was out I wasn't doing the lion's share by any means, but I was out last weekend. We've got teams training for 10 tours. There are teams going out this weekend. They're training for Duke of Edinburgh. And this is all extra stuff, So you can't be adding stuff in. You can't be. And this is another thing that John Hattie says. I think he says, particularly in the UK, it wouldn't surprise me, we're very good at chucking more stuff in, but we're not great at taking stuff out, So to say, I want you to do this, I want you to have a new approach, I want you to be thinking in new ways. What is this metacognition thing? What is retrieval practice? That's all well and good, but you can't just add it on and expect everyone to be doing it. So it takes time, doesn't it? It takes time to reach that commonality of language, that shared understanding, so that the benefit has to be for the pupils, doesn't it? So that when pupils are moving from key stage 1 to key stage 2, 3, 4, 5, there is that commonality of language. They understand what you're talking about when you talk about retrieval practice. You talk about metacognition, and you talk about spaced learning or interval learning and different strategies and approaches. The more time you spend in those conversations, professional discussions, the more that just becomes what you do and how you do it. But it doesn't happen overnight. It can't happen overnight.
No, I was listening to one of my kind of show colleagues, as she was talking about if she actually has stuck to kind of contract hours, she would have 6 minutes of preparation, assessment, evaluation time for each class that she's preparing for. Like, teachers are busy, so I guess it's trying to balance that. So if there was something that a teacher could do that would take them towards maybe the vision that the school has or the vision that they have, and brings them closer to that vision, what is one thing they could actually do tomorrow?
It's an interesting thing. I think this isn't a get out, but I have got a thing in mind. But you've got to think about the kids in front of you. You've got to think about that class, that subject. Where are they in the scheme of things? Yourself as a teacher. I don't want every teacher to be. This is not the Borg selective. I don't want every teacher to be a carbon copy. We don't want this to be a sausage factory. That's not how it works. You have to have individuality. But I've been going back. I've been looking over Graham Nuttall, Graham Nuttall.
Yep.
And overlapping with John Hattie, and we don't know the minds of children. So one of the best ways in is through questioning. And Bruce Robertson, he's everywhere. He's terrific, talking about questioning, and it kind of overlaps with feedback. You could see some overlap with feedback. Definitely how you deliver feedback and how feedback is received. But do you allow time? Do you genuinely allow time for pupils to think, reflect, and answer? So the wait time when you ask a question. And one of the things Bruce has said, I was listening to him on a podcast. This was a while ago. It was a webinar a while ago. If you teach for 30 minutes, you should have 30 questions in that lesson. Obviously not all at once, but some of those will be pre-prepared.
Yep.
Some of them will naturally come as a course of what happens during. But what that means is those of us who are a bit verbose and tend to stand and talk, it might let you put the brakes on. It might help you put the brakes on. Go, wait a minute. I've been talking at these children for 10 minutes. They haven't said a word yet. So I'm already 10 minutes in. That should have been 10 questions worth by now, So think about the questions that you want to find out the answers to from them, and allow them the chance to question you back, but allow them the time to answer, allow them the time to talk to each other. Metacognitive question. Okay, Tim, here's a question. Talk to Alan about it, and then I'm going to come back to it, and you're going to tell me what Alan said. So they're actually.
If I had 30 minutes and 30 questions and everyone discussed that, God, that would be. I'd have a heart attack.
No, I know, but it's the danger, isn't it? There's nothing wrong with silence. We fear dead air, don't we? As teachers.
We do. Yeah. Especially on this show, Alan. Especially on this show.
No, exactly. But we're all right, because like we said with Terry Wogan, you just imagine you've got one. The one person out there is still listening.
I've got one person listening.
Exactly.
And it's probably my mum. Hi, Mum.
Yeah. Hi, Mum.
Okay, Alan, we made it to the end of the first part of the show.
Okay, terrific.
Thanks, Alan. So I'm just going to shout out to AQA. AQA know teachers are the real experts in the classroom. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, like me, like all of us. And they're combining your insight with assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training, and guidance that genuinely makes a difference. They are the UK's most chosen assessment organisation. So chances are you already know their work. And as we head into exam season, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. So if you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers just like us, then please do head to their website to find out more. So Alan, the next part is our shout out board.
The shout out board.
Okay.
And this is, dear listeners, for anyone who's listening to the show or anyone who is catching up via the podcast, please feel free to direct message me on LinkedIn. But Are there any teachers? Are there any leaders? Are there any people associated with your school community who are deserving of some extra recognition, a kind word, or a general bit of education? Love. I had one shout out on LinkedIn that said, this is a shout out to heads of years and pastoral teams, the people who quietly hold the emotional architecture of a school together, often without any strategic credit for the work they do. Thank you. For me, I was going to shout out to exam officers, but actually I want to shout out to all of those people who are sort of dealing with the really difficult situation the world has placed us into recently. I know lots of people out in a variety of different Middle Eastern countries, and the work that people are continuing to do in the face of such difficulty. You guys are absolutely incredible, and my thoughts go out to every single one of you. So, Alan, actually, I probably should give them a round of applause. Why have the special effects if you don't indulge in the usage of them? So this is my lessons learned section. And Alan, I just wanted to ask if there was a mistake or a tough moment that ended up teaching you something valuable.
Ooh, gosh, a mistake or a tough moment.
I'm going to buy you some time. I'm going to let you know
okay.
one thing that I've seen a couple of times in schools, and those friends, if they're listening, they're probably going to kill me for saying this, but one thing I've learned from other people's mistakes is do not leave your laptop on top of the
God. Okay, right. Okay, that got me.
I have seen that happen a few times as people sheepishly come in. I'm really sorry, but I left it on top, not inside, on top of a taxi.
Well, things. My wife will again. She'll remember things like this, but in the days when maybe I had a tutor group and you had to prepare something for an assembly, and you sit with the rest of the congregation, and there's that pregnant pause, and you haven't done anything. So you're looking around, going, "Who's not done this?" So just being on top of things in the day-to-day, running of things, and remembering what day of the week it is, and those kinds of things. I'm not the world's best timekeeper.
Okay.
I know that. I know that because once upon a time, when I was a director of sport somewhere else, someone left me a Thomas the Tank Engine Learn to Tell the Time book in my office.
Someone's definitely telling you something there, Alan.
Yeah. So that was great. So that kind of thing.
Yeah, perfect. Yes. Okay, I'm going to shout out to Hachette Learning. This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning. They're publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So, Alan, we're going to move into part 2, building the 2040 curriculum. So you've got an opportunity now, Alan. You are going into a school. You're going to build it from the ground up. You're absolutely starting from scratch. We know that these students entering the school are going to leave in 2040. Where would you start in designing the school curriculum?
Still crazy. Investment. Or a plea for investment. We were talking about this just before the show started, so I'm going to share that anecdote.
Please.
So Daniel Emerson, he's a fantastic guy. Works with the Good Future Foundation. He and I were in some schools with the Kerno Learning Trust down in Cornwall recently, and he was saying, "Look, think about this. We're trying to do all this development and implementation. People are trying to weave AI in. I know we're not talking just about AI, but when you've got these major companies investing $1 trillion in research, how on earth do you keep up with that? What, you can't move fast enough to keep up with that, and the change is beginning to become kind of, this is not me saying, there's someone else who knows more than me, it's becoming exponential. It's heading in that direction. Things are really kind of taking off. I'll just share those is the facts. my co-pilot buddy. We shared this before. Just to put it into perspective, there's loads of millionaires. Okay, so £1 million, 1 million seconds, 11.5 days.
Yeah.
1 billion seconds, 31.7 years. And we're thinking of this in terms of money as well. 1 trillion seconds, the difference, the gap between 1 billion and 1 trillion. So 1 billion seconds, 31.7 years, and 1 trillion seconds, 31,700 years.
Yeah.
Now we kind of convert that into money.
Well, we can't pay TAs in school, right?
No, right. Okay, exactly. So
That's D&D, right? So
where's the investment? Where's the real investment in education? Where's the capital venture? It's not like you can't. I remember having this discussion with someone a long time ago. Well, of course, no one invests in education because you don't produce anything apart from your children being educated and coming out the other end, hopefully, ready and prepared. So that's my little bugbear. So investment, proper investment, get on with it. But what kind of thinkers do we want them to become? These children, and I'm starting with talking about the little ones. I don't think that the effect on, and we're now probably talking about parents as well, the effects of COVID, the long term. I'm not talking about long COVID. I just mean the societal impact. Yeah. You can't say this is a global pandemic. This is a once in a lifetime thing, and that's it now. Let's move on. Forget about that. There must still be ripples. There must still be things. And we talk about oracy, the need to develop oracy. I think that's strong. I think you've got to look at major shifts in education in the past over the generations. And I'll come back to generations. What's stuck? There are some things that have stickability. There are some things that matter. Literacy matters. I think the physical ability to write matters, and we can tie that into cognitive science. We know that if you write stuff down physically, it sticks more. It goes in, you've got a better chance of embedding stuff in the long-term memory. So all different types of literacy, and now we put in AI literacy on top of that. But then we have to also look at things like, these are children. These are little children. So we're looking for stuff that's going to make sense to them. It's going to help them. You look at the work of people like Hayley Peacock. You'd find her all over LinkedIn. The pioneering approach to learning, which is more than it sounds like. There's rigor behind it. There's method behind it. Very deliberate. But you are allowing children to be children. And I was listening to Amal Raja, love Amal Raja, his Radical podcast with Jonathan Haidt recently. And both of them saying, as parents now, we just want our kids to be able to be kids. I grew up, I grew up in the 70s, and it was, off you go. And I had a great childhood. There's nothing wrong with that. But Jonathan Haidt, Amal Raja, we, reflecting on their own childhood, I want my child to have some of these opportunities that I had growing up, the freedom to play, etc., and learning through play. And these are things that we've said. These things get said time and time and time and time again. But like in your introduction, as you rightly kind of alluded to, we're still on the same assessment treadmill.
Yeah.
So I would start looking at that, what's a meaningful assessment? And then, Tim, I think something I've been thinking about a lot just over the recent days. I did an inset on this longer ago than I thought, like a couple of years ago, I think. But I think generational identity is useful. Maybe it is a stereotype. Maybe it is, a bit of a jelly mold. But I'm a Gen X. Okay, so that puts me, and the zeitgeist of it must have had an impact on me. There was, I tell the kids, there was no @ mark on a keyboard when I was young. In fact, there was no keyboard. There weren't even any keyboards. There was nothing of that. That didn't exist. And then what? No, none of that. No phone, nothing. Okay. If I got cut, my dad would clean it with surgical spirits. It was the 70s. Okay.
Yeah.
You get on with it. The gap between me and Gen Alpha or Gen Beta, they're starting to come through, is immeasurable. I don't know how these kids think. I don't know yet properly how they learn. We don't know the impact of technology and AI on learning because there hasn't been enough longitudinal research. But we do know how the brain develops. We do know how we can build, long-term memory. Little kids I was working with today, we're talking about learning. This is early years, key stage 1. They are talking with me, and I'm not making this up. They're talking with me about schema. They're talking with me about metacognition. When we talk about AI, they're talking about hallucination in AI and understanding what that means. That's the key point. I hadn't seen them for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
They could retrieve. We're talking about retrieval. We use the analogy of a dog, like my dog. Chuck something into the long grass. There's a thought going into your long-term memory. Can you bring it back? There's retrieval, bringing back the memory. Sometimes you have to sniff around a bit, then you find it, but that's good because that means next time you go looking, it won't take you quite so long, because you do that again and again. So I think we have to look at what we know works rather than trying to second guess what might work. And we need to listen to these experts who are out there. Louisa Munch, she's all over social media. She was another one of Amal's guests, and she talks about nostalgia. And I think this goes back to what you were saying at the beginning. We can't educate these children nostalgically for our childhood. We have to educate these children for their future. Okay. We can't predict the future, but that doesn't mean we don't have a go. It doesn't mean we sit back and let things carry on as is. We have to put serious thought into our GCSEs. This is my opinion. Okay, I'll say that. Are GCSEs fit for purpose? I haven't actually made a statement. I made a question. Are GCSEs fit for purpose? If they're not, why not? Why are they still there? Are they still going to be fit for purpose? Is that exam still going to be fit for purpose in 2040? Because if it's not, you've got to prepare the ground for what else you do, how else you do it.
We know they're not fit for purpose now. I mean, if you look at the sort of research that comes out from businesses, they're finding there's a massive disconnect with what students are outputting in exams and then what they're able to do in the workplace. I mean, there's got to be a disconnect somewhere, right? Like that suggests that our way of measuring people is not working. And when we have got into this, there's an app for that kind of culture, haven't we? It's okay. Like struggling with maths, there's an app for that. You're struggling with social relations. There's an app for that. It sometimes feels like that's the direction we're going, but I don't know. Like, how are you feeling about sort of talking about Louisa Munch there? Are we okay telling young people we've got to prepare them for their future? We've got to educate them on things, even though we know it's bad for them.
Sorry, what's bad for them? What's the thing?
So I guess because part of my thinking for the 2040 kind of preparation is probably increased screen time, leveraging things like AI, which it's not going to go away. Ultimately, that's where education is going to have to go to sort of be morally responsible with the use of AI. But
yes, you can't ignore that.
Even though we know that maybe it's not actually good for our
but this is the thing, isn't it? Because I think sensible people who I've spoken to, like yourself.
Thanks. And there are other people sensible people.
There are also, but this was a good analogy someone else gave me. I won't claim this, but there's all the variants of AI. So we'll talk about that for a minute. Think of it as a Swiss Army knife. Which tool do you want to use? What is the job you're doing at the moment that AI might help you with? Okay. It's not one size fits all. That thing for getting Boy Scouts out of horses' hooves. That's not going to help you with everything. Only if there's a Boy Scout stuck in a horse's hoof is when that's useful. Okay, so you've got to use a different tool. You've got to use a different platform. You've got to understand how that platform works and use it properly to get the best results out of that platform. So it's not AI, and this is the problem. People are talking in generic terms about generative AI, and so as if AI is a thing, but it's not a thing. It's a hydra, isn't it? There's so much, and we can educate children that this is not learning. It's an assistant to learning, and it might be that it's a jumping off point. It helps you get started with something, and then you put it away, because you know what, we can turn it off. I have had colleagues, quite right, I totally understand this. I don't want it coming in my classroom and taking over. And I said, well, you can always just switch it off. You don't.
Can you, Alan? I mean, I use Teams. I use Teams, and it's on there. I want to do a search on Google. It's on there. I turn on my phone. It's on there.
Yeah.
Hi, Tim. How are you? Like it's. Can we turn it off? Are we at that point? And
well, no, you can literally shut your device. Turn off your device. And I think this is very interesting. The Swedish thing. Sweden haven't ditched all technology and gone back to slates and chalk. They haven't done that. But they've got a hybrid, sensible. We use it when we want to use it. We're the ones who decide when it gets used. And all they've done is articulate that more clearly and more fluently than other people have. Yeah, I think that's my take on it. So you can. It's right to be cautious. It's right to that. But we'll go back to these children, the Gen Alpha and the Gen Beta. They are born into this ecosystem. They are immersed in this technology. So they are going to think differently. But because they're thinking differently, we shouldn't then be trying to drag them into our way of thinking, our shape of thinking. I think we need to revisit. Child psychology is going to have not a field day, but a lot of really interesting input and really interesting developmental stuff going on, just because their attention is different. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but of course it is wrong, Tim, if we're trying to drag them towards GCSEs and sitting in silence for 2 hours or 3 hours, having learned not just a curriculum, but how to access that exam. You always learn two things, don't you? GCSE, it's the content and wait a minute, what does the exam board want? So GCSEs are excellent at measuring how good you are at GCSEs. Yeah, that's what they're good at. Yeah. What is the construct of the exam? What is it actually trying to assess? Because if the average reading age of a GCSE paper is about 16 years old. So if you're not there, it doesn't matter if you understand the skills and the knowledge of that. If you can't access the paper, because for whatever reason your reading isn't quite there yet, you can't show your knowledge and your understanding, Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's it. Like, as we've seen the advent of more technology, we've seen decrease in. So I can't even speak as I'm trying to make a point about literacy. So that really goes down well for me. But we're seeing ever decreasing literacy rates, right? We're seeing 40% of young people in America, are not able to access basic literary texts, to be able to follow the instructions on cooking a particular product, by sticking it into the microwave. Yeah. We see on the sort of prison pipeline that actually over 60% of people who are in prison have a reading age lower than 11. So there's definitely a connection, with kind of literacy rates. And I do sort of worry, I guess, as we sort of increase ed tech. But then I also read some reassuring sort of research recently, which is You know, from the guys who make Teacher Tap, they've kind of coupled up and they make Inner Tap as well.
Oh yes,
And,
yes.
On there, it's teachers who've got 20 years of experience are actually a lot more cynical of ed tech and things like that. So I'm supposed to be grumpy about these kind of innovations.
Yeah.
Okay, look, I wanted to ask a sort of couple more questions, and the
Sure.
first one is, look, you know, if we're talking about 2040 and being ready for 2040, like, what does a 2040 ready lesson? I don't know, in history, because I'm a historian and I'm selfish, but English, maths, whatever it might be, like, what does it look like? Can you make that concrete for me?
Are we imagining there's still the exam system going on, or we?
You can. I mean, unfortunately, we are at the moment within the confines of an exam system, but you can go with wherever you want. It could be in any key stage. I don't mind. What does it look like to be getting our students ready for 2040?
I think in general we've got to have that focus all the way through. So let's imagine we've started the journey with the little ones, and they're familiar with this. I think you've got to start with oracy. Okay, and I think that is all the way through. So if it's history, historical language, understanding historical terms, maybe you've left them with a question. I'm quite a big fan of, especially with younger kids. I genuinely, I pretend you don't understand what you were doing in the previous lesson, and get them to tell you. Get them to talk first, and then get them to tell you. So then you're embedding retrieval, and then you can start to talk about retrieval practice.
I don't have to pretend.
Maybe I pretend to pretend. So that kind of thing going on. But as I said, what works? What are things that will work consistently? So if we can have reflective metacognitive strategy woven through. So if we do then get to the point where this is now the tech part of the lesson, do we understand how we're going to be using the tech now? So are we using it to generate questions for us to bounce off and go away and answer? Or do we start with, through oracy, what do we know already? So we're eliciting understanding from the pupils. Is there any prior learning going on, prior knowledge going on? And lots of good research. Hattie, I said, I don't want to misquote people, so I'm sorry for that. But pupils will already have an understanding of a significant amount of your lesson content already.
Yep.
Let's just say 60%. They know 60% of what you're going to tell. They already know that, but it's not a shared 60%. It's different, So where do you pitch that? So it doesn't matter the subject. Okay, you need to find out what they know already, and you may have done that prior. So they come in with their own questions, and we're back to questioning and talking and discussing, and the familiar routines like know, want to know, and learn. What do I want to know at the beginning that I don't know already about this thing? What have I learned at the end of a process? What's the outcome at the end of the process? But I think I would be building lessons, generally speaking, more and more around oracy and around that shared communication. Again, though, going back to the point that we shouldn't be afraid of that silence. Allowing that time to think. So maybe that gets built in. I've been talking with Emily Neville. She's our new head of English here in the lower part, in the prep school. And I can't remember, I read it somewhere, but we're talking, let's have some analog sessions or analog days. There is no tech. There's nothing. So on those days, how do you structure it? How do you structure your teaching on that day? Because a lot of us, even without AI, we've become so reliant on PowerPoint this, or, video that, or whatever. None of that. Go back to grassroots learning. I sometimes wonder it'd be great if it wouldn't be great. What would happen if there was a big solar flare that just wiped out all the tech? How would you teach then?
Brilliant.
And that's how I think that's how you should teach.
Yeah.
And everything else is an add-on to that. Imagine there's no tech in your classroom. how do you teach?
Yeah.
So it's got to be based around discussion. It's got to be based around listening, and it's got to be based around questioning,
Yeah.
and not being afraid of that quietness.
Are you
Yeah.
reassured by the government's that kind of white paper? I mean, it's definitely broadening like
Kind of
what
yes
we're
and
doing, but the exam
yes.
system is staying in place. So
Well, yes and no. I had a conversation. There's another chap. I'll give a call out. Alex Moore does a lot of work with STEM, and he does a lot of work in the world of AI. He's helping us with our AI development. He'd been involved in some of the the background stuff going on with curriculum review and so on. I'm a member, I'm a fellow of the Chartered College, so I've seen the stuff that's coming out, and it's good stuff. It's got good provocations, it's got good questions built around oracy and learning in through nature, which is a big focus for us here at the moment, driven by one of my colleagues who's called Katie Kelly. She's just got really behind that and really pushing that kind of thing. But what Alex, I was getting all excited, and Alex said, "Well, if you're hoping for a change in assessment, that's not gonna happen." Now, I know I did O levels. I'm that old, okay? But you've got to love the peppered moth. Who doesn't love the peppered moth? But it's still in. That was in the exams I took over 40 years ago. We were talking about the peppered moth.
yeah,
There must be other ways to show environmental change and the impact of pollution on the world around us.
yeah.
No, you need a more responsive, dynamic curriculum. Where's all the modern literature?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what our listeners think because they're listening live to the show. Like, what do you think? Are you reassured, dear listeners, by the white paper? Do you think this is going to be the beginning of the change that we need, especially as we're starting to think about 2040? So now is the time for
Late rant.
in case you didn't hear that rant. This is your opportunity if you would like to write in and hear your opinions viewed on air about the things that maybe you're frustrated about, what's bothering you in education. We are a very positive show. We do like to talk about the positives. So, we try to maintain that general vibe within the show. But are there things that are getting under your skin? Are there things that are just you're looking at and just going, do you know what? Wow, like we're doing this on top of everything else as well. Get it off your chest. See this as a show it's for cleansing, and getting things off your chest and feeling good about the next step. So, Alan, let's go into part 3, and I've got a few sort of honest questions for you, and I guess the starting point is, I guess I'm trying to sort of step into maybe what people who are listening into the show are starting to think, but. We're talking about future-ready education, and is that actually available to all schools, or is this just a luxury that's going to be for those schools that are really well-resourced and therefore maybe have a little bit more freedom to experiment? Is it going to become a little bit elitist?
I'll drop back to assessment to kind of illustrate this, because there's a lot of talk around everything going online and GCSEs going online and everyone can do it online. I don't know. I don't personally know any schools. I've worked in a number of schools across both the maintained and the independent sector. I've never worked in a school that has the infrastructure and the hardware to allow an entire cohort of year 11 to sit down at the same time with no glitches and access a 3-hour exam. It's not going to happen, because you go back to where's the investment? Where's the investment? The proper investment in education. And I don't care what color. I'm not talking politics, because it's colorblind, isn't it? Like you said, there's a lot of words, there's a lot of verbiage around education, very famously. And we go back, dear Ken Robinson, people still quote him. Why do they still quote him? because he's still relevant.
'Cause
You know,
nothing changed.
and the poem, it always reminds me of the poem Exposure by Wilfred Owen. Do you know that?
Yep.
Nothing happens.
Yeah.
You're
Sad, isn't
sitting
it?
waiting. You're sitting and waiting, and you build up that cortisol because you're sitting and waiting. And if something does happen, it's frantic and it's bang, 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 bang. But then you go back to, but nothing happens. And you wait and you wait and you wait for change, and nothing happens. Not genuinely, not genuine. Genuine change will only come, as you said,
Yeah.
through a change on assessment and the way. Why do we assess in the way that we assess? So yeah, it will benefit those schools who are already good at that, who do well at that, until we change that bit, because it almost doesn't matter. In fact, it makes it pointless almost doing anything different up to that point, because you've still got to clear that hurdle
Yeah.
to then go on, you know.
Do you know one thing that sort of blew my mind is that, you know, the sort of one-to-one policy, and as we kind of talk about a lot of the tech within school and ed tech strategy, you know, it's 15% of primary schools have an approach of one-to-one devices, and 20% of students in senior schools have that same approach. And you kind of think it's endemic everywhere. At the same time, we've got students who've got devices in their pocket, right? Between the sort of 5 to 7 year old demographic, 25% of students have got phones, and that's it's mind-boggling. But okay, so there's a teacher who's listening to everything we're saying, and they agree with everything they're saying. And the problem is, I think that we maybe work within systems that actively resist some of the change. But what would you say to that teacher who's listening, who agrees with everything we've said today, and they walk back into a school tomorrow where none of this is possible? What would you say to them?
I'll go back to, I think, the little thing earlier on about you've got to have that individuality in the classroom. And you go back to Simon Sinek. Why are you there? Why are you in that classroom? You can make a change to how those children learn in front of you in that classroom. So don't worry that you can't change everything. You can't, you know, none of us can turn the oil tanker individually, but we can all give it a little kind of like poke. Maybe all of us giving it a bit of a poke would do something. Probably not, but we can at least do it.
It's the interesting thing is it's repositing ourselves, I guess, as the experts, isn't it? And having a chance to have a say and have a voice. And schools, you want them to develop those cultures where teachers do have a voice to be able to make changes. Look, do you think that our curriculum is going to equip, as we stand now, is our curriculum equipping students for 2040?
I mean, it is almost an impossible thing, isn't it? I think no. So it's got to be dynamic and responsive. I think we were saying this earlier on. We were talking about other things, but it's got to be dynamic and responsive. So, you know, maybe you can't, I mean, not everyone has terminal summative exams at those points in the lives of children. It's not a global thing. We do it, some other places do it. Let's imagine you didn't do that. You would then be able to respond dynamically, far more quickly, to changes that happened within society, within learning, within tech. Wouldn't you? You'd be able to pivot more quickly.
Yeah.
But at the moment, you can't do that. If tech starts to go exponentially, why are we still doing you can't ignore what's going on in the world around you. You know, you've got to respond to the world around you. So go back to what sticks, what has stuck throughout lots of change over different periods in recent, let's say recent, define recent, I don't know, but recent history. Things that work, things that are important, things that genuinely aid cognition and development and self-reflection and deeper learning. Those things, can we do those things? And can we do those things without stopping? Because you've got to make an assessment now. Continuous assessment, assessment for learning, reflection, building, collaboration, working, all of those things working together without relying on tech to do that for you. Don't let the tech do it for you, but use the tech and weave the tech in. We don't know how that's going to change and develop over the next 10 years. So we're looking at 14. But yeah, the short answer is is the current system, in my opinion, won't work for those kids who are currently in early years key stage 1.
So we're now going to go to a very serious part of the show, Alan.
Make us laugh! Make us laugh!
The job of our listeners who are listening live to the show, or for those who are catching up by the podcast, you can send me your stories. My job is using one of these stories, Alan, is to see if I can crack that facade and put a smile on your face. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I can't promise that I won't laugh at this particular story. So all-round good egg, Louise, who is a fellow host with TTR. She does a great show. We sort of struck up a little bit of a thing online where we kind of chat to each other and give a little bit of each other support. I asked her if she wouldn't mind if I shared a particular story that she shared with me. So let's see if this works. And imagine, as I'm telling this, that I am not this bald person in front of you, but I am, in fact, the person in the story. So I'm wearing a nice pink wrap dress in the canteen on lunch duty. The principal and a pastoral lead are having an intense conversation. One is holding chips. It's chip day. I slide in / semi-lunge to stealth a chip. Only the stealth is no longer stealth as my front foot locates a squashed grape. I slow-mo, a kid you not, actual slow-mo, go down into the splits. She did point out in brackets that she is ballet trained. The canteen goes deathly silent. I am hysterically laughing, but no student feels they can laugh. This inevitably makes it worse. The principal just casually picks me up from the floor whilst continuing his conversation, pretending it never happened.
That is good. That is good.
Oh, Louise.
You are champion.
You broke Alan's facade. Shout out to AQA. AQA know teachers are the real experts in the classroom. That's why they work closely with teachers like you, like me, like us, combining your insight with their assessment expertise to create resources, tools, training, and guidance that genuinely makes a difference. They are the UK's most chosen assessment organization, so chances are you already know their work. And as we head into exam season, AQA are focused on helping teachers feel supported and feeling ready. So if you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers, then please do head to their website to find out more. So just a few more questions before I really put you on the spot with the quick-fire quiz into part 4, Alan. Like, what can teachers do tomorrow? I think we've touched on that a little bit as we go through, and you've eloquently explained some of the things that you feel that teachers could do in the classroom. Now, can I ask about one thing that maybe in your role as assistant head for teaching and learning, one thing that you've changed in teaching and learning and how that's done in the school? So, not necessarily a pilot, but something that's happened. And what were your thoughts on that as it was implemented?
Yeah, so we not a pilot. Well, everything starts as a pilot. Is that fair enough? I don't know.
To be
Is
fair,
yeah. So we've developed, and this is, we go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. Very much through collaboration with the whole staff body. The whole teaching staff body. We've developed working groups which come together to discuss evidence-informed cognitive science. You mentioned Inner Tap, I'll give a shout out, Inner Drive, the Inner Drive group. They're fantastic. Bradley and Ed and all of
Yeah,
these.
second, I think on the list of radio shows and podcasts, probably.
Yeah, probably, yes.
Second, I think behind TTR.
Yes.
Other podcasters are available too.
You're probably quite right, actually. Yeah. What does Hannah Fry know? What does Amal Raj in there?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, that coming together, and that's had a big impact on culturally our approach to CPD. So we're able to build CPD programs, and then these, the guys come together, and it's deliberately not in faculty or subject or department groups. It's cross faculty, cross department. So you've got colleagues coming together to talk about evidence-informed practice. We've had that big focus on metacognition and a drive on that over the last 4 or 5 years. Discussing things with colleagues you wouldn't normally sit down and have those conversations with, potentially, and it's led to some global impact on the way that we do certain things around the school. One of which I'll give you, because you say, like what? So one of those what's I've already named, Katie Kelly. So there's a colleague of mine. At the time, she was head of PE, teaching BTEC. We're talking about metacognition, metacognitive practice. She comes across the concept of metacognitive exam wrappers. We have an inset, and it's a bit like a teach meet. So different colleagues talk about the evidence-informed practice they looked at the year before, and they present that to everyone else. Different colleagues talk about different things. We had something about mathematics from the prep school. We had some talk about reading from early years, reading with the AAL. That was a nice overlap. Katie stands up and talks about bringing in exam wrappers to her BTEC group. So before the exam, how are you feeling? How is your revision? Are you confident, etc., etc.? Reflection, the metacognitive cycle. Take the assessment, get the feedback. How did it go? Did it go as well as you thought it went? If it went wrong, where did it go wrong? What are your next steps? What can you do to improve? What can you keep going that worked well? Colleagues were so engaged with that. I was watching from the side and making notes. And we had thought, even before, maybe we can, another pilot, maybe we can push this out to English and maths, or then get them to have a go. But such was the response that it went viral. So every year group now, and it's been going on for a while, when there's a significant assessment point in the year, the whole year group engages in this metacognitive exam wrapper process, which gives their personal tutors, something to talk about with them, and they can have that discussion because it's the pupil's own thoughts, and obviously it leads into departmental and subject discussions with the groups that you're teaching. So that whole cycle is that was good.
Is there anything that maybe surprised you the most out of the kind of different initiatives that have been put in place?
No, I think we've got a great staff body. They're receptive to the concept of change. Let's put it that way. And again, I think I used the phrase earlier on. I'm not going to say all the teachers all the time, every day. They're not walking around, with their nose in a research book or whatever. But they're open to the concept. They're open to the concept of reflection, reflective practice, because what's good, goose and gander and all of that. So we have that within our own current appraisal system, which we're in the process of redressing and addressing, and things come up for review, don't they? So we're thinking like that. But I think an essential part of our own appraisal process is that reflection, that metacognitive reflection. Why did you start teaching in the first place? Tim, why did you start teaching? What have you learned over the last year or two that has had an impact on your approach to teaching? how do you measure success within your own teaching?
Yep.
You know, so all of that, as I say, you know, it is a cultural thing. It's a whole cultural thing. It's going on with the pupils in the classrooms. It's going on with the teachers, both in the classroom as a teacher and then, you know, as a professional outside. And I'll stress the point. I'm not pretending they're driving home going, oh, do you know, I must go through my metacognitive cycle. But it's something that we can have those conversations because we know what it means to have those conversations.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Do you think schools have the power to have their students prepared for 2030? Do you think that's in the hands of schools?
A lot of that's down to leadership, I think.
Yeah.
Every school has every school has the potential, don't they?
Yeah.
Every child has the potential. Every teacher has the potential. But what is the leadership? Where is the leadership taking you? What direction are you moving in at the moment? I think.
Alan, I think the things that I take away from what you've discussed is that you know it seems to be such an integral part of the process to incorporate teachers. You've shouted out to so many of your colleagues who seem to be having such a massive impact in terms of helping to establish that culture within the school. And that's such an important approach to take within schools to have staff who are passionate, who are interested, who are able to celebrate and share that expertise in order to drive communities forward. You know, I'm also positive. I think schools are super innovative places full of just brilliant minds, and I think it comes down to that exact point. It's all about the culture, right, of bringing out those experts within the classroom, because teachers are innovating every single day under difficult circumstances, under high stress workloads, working with a variety of different students and diverse needs. And it's this wonderful, eclectic, diverse mix of things. And I think teachers are those people who spearhead innovation. So I think if people are going to get it right, let's let teachers off the leash a little bit and let's get our curriculum for 2040. So a shout out to Hachette Learning, because you know this show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning. It's such an important part of the process with us. They are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. So level up your professional development today and visit www.hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. Alan, we're now moving to the most frightening part.
Quickfire quiz.
Quickfire quiz.
Quickfire quiz. Alan, and to the listeners of the show, Alan, you have 1 minute in which to answer as quickly as possible, in a way that still makes sense, as quickly as possible, as many questions as possible.
Okay.
We have seen attempts from 10 correct answers through to sheer panic.
Are there correct answers? There's right and wrong, is it? It's not just a...
Well, no. I correct is probably too grandiose. It's just an answer that vaguely makes some sort of degree of sense. Is absolutely fine.
Right,
as long as you're not just saying banana to everything, then we're okay. Right. So, are you ready?
Ish.
We were born ready, Alan.
Born ready.
Okay, Alan. One word that sums up the state of curriculum design in schools right now.
Okay, yeah, I have to be careful with pronunciation. I did think about, because you did let me know this one was coming. Okay, so the word is flux. There's an L in that
this
word.
is a quickfire quiz, right?
Yes.
Favorite way to get a staff meeting back on track?
Can we go back to what we were talking about originally, please?
If you had to teach a subject you've never taught, what would terrify you the most?
Oh, terrify me the most. Further maths.
Best term break. Is it half term or summer?
Oh, no, it's a half term. Yeah. I'm a fan of the 6-term year model.
Okay. Coffee or tea to get through a parents' evening?
Coffee. Or, but not too much.
A quote or idea you actually live by?
Oh, no, I do. Semi-serious. There's a. I'm not a Quaker, but there's a Quaker. I shall pass this way but once, etc. So you could look it up, see the rest. That's my why. I shall pass this way but once.
I'm giving you a score of 5. I'm giving you a score of 5 on
I'll
that
take
one.
that. I'll take that. That's 5 out of 5.
Definitely. Samina is still, sorry, Samina, it's still at the bottom with her mid quiz panic. So that left her with 3 correct answers. Alan, thank you for being a really good sport. Teachers Talk Connect is back. It's our annual CPD and networking extravaganza. Join the TTR team on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. The tickets are free. Genuinely, what are you waiting for? If you head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026, you will see that list of incredible speakers. And like, this is free CPD. I just think the list of speakers that we've got on different strands is honestly, it's incredible. And it's something that if you have the chance to go, please do go and network, go and hear some fantastic speakers. So those who are listening live to the show, thank you so much for tuning in. Those who are catching up via podcast, thank you for taking the time. But please don't forget to like, download, comment, and interact. It's really important for our show. It's really important for TTR. And with your support, we can absolutely make sure that teachers have a voice in education. And you've been listening to The Late Show with Tim on Teachers Talk Radio. I would like to say a huge thank you to my guest, Alan Johnson, for the time, the effort, the thought, the process, the eloquence.
Thank you. It's been great. It's been great. You've been a great host. You've made it easy. So, thank you very much.
I'll send the cash across later.
Yeah, do.
So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll hopefully see you all next time.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.